you say the Mama Podcast?
Mama Podcast.
Hi Mama, you're listening to the Mama Podcast. It's Sumaya here, the co-founder of Mama Emmy app. Mama Emmy is the first app to exclusively connect mothers across the Middle East, connect with like-minded mamas and create lifelong friendships. At Mama, we are all about connecting mamas to empower women. So let's join together and make this mission a reality. Hi there, today I'm talking to Sarah. She is a personal coach and mentor for mothers. She helps moms reclaim their identity without guilt. She really is redefining how we talk about motherhood and what it can look like for each of us individually. Let's get stuck right in. Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mama Podcast. I'm super excited to have a chat with you. Before we get into our conversation, I'd love for you to share who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your brand.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. My name's Sarah Babiker. I am originally Sudanese, but born and raised in the UK. And I'm a positive psychology coach. I mentor mothers, both one-to-one and through my program. And Instagram is my jam. That's where I do everything. That's where I share all of my content. It's relatively new. I've been a coach for nearly 3 years now, but my focus on mothers has just been in the last 6 months or so. Thank you, COVID. That was the trigger. But definitely enjoying the engagement that I'm getting and seeing mums kind of relate to the content that I'm putting across. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later on. But yeah, my educational background is actually in clinical psychology, so I almost did that. But I fell out of love with it because I really found myself wondering, what more is there? And as much as I recognize, of course, there is a very important place for healing and for, treating disorders, I kept finding myself going, okay, but then what? What happens after that? How do we thrive? How do we flourish? And that's what positive psychology is all about.
I mean, I'm sure you still take a lot from what you did as a psychologist to what you do now. I'm sure there's a lot of value in what you have from there.
Yeah, 100%. And I always say to all of my clients like this, although, the coaching is forward moving, there is space for healing within there in the context of, if you have a specific goal you're trying to achieve and you just keep hitting a block, there's clearly something there that needs to be healed. So yeah, definitely being able to recognize the signs of things like anxiety or depression so I can make the right referrals, definitely, yeah, a bonus, definitely not a waste.
So, I mean, I love your page because you share so much about motherhood. And actually, what I love about it is that you share the real stuff about motherhood. It's so easy to go on social media and see the perfect, outing, the perfect food, the perfect or well-dressed kids and all of that kind of stuff. And I love that you share all of the other stuff about motherhood, the days that you do feel really exhausted and the days that you do feel anxiety. And my question to you is, why is it important for us to talk about this? Why do you feel that it's really important that we share this?
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold. So I just want to start by saying that we have to be careful not to kind of judge the posts that do look perfect and filtered and edited, because that could simply be a mum's way of celebrating and say, hey, I had a really great day for once, and the fact that mother isn't posting anything else, that's her own, her own process. So that I just wanted to kind of put that caveat in there. But we always see it, right? So I wanted to bring the balance so that mums can see everybody else has the whole experience. Because the danger is when you're scrolling through your feed and you see the well-dressed kids and all of that, you're like, what's wrong with me? Eventually it's going to lead to that. Why can't I be that way? And why is she doing it so much better? And there must be something fundamentally wrong with my capabilities of being a mother. And so, yeah, my intention is just to be as authentic as possible so that as many mums as possible can recognize themselves in my posts, in my content, in my stories. I post my celebrations as well because mums need to learn to do that as well. I don't think enough mums say, you know what, I got through the day, clap for me. Sometimes that is a huge achievement. So really just being as kind of all round as possible, because that's an accurate reflection of what a day in the life of a mum is. It's not all butterflies and rainbows, but it's not all crap either.
Yeah, which is what I love about your page, because you do share, like you said, you share the wins and also the difficulties as well. And it's nice to be able to see like both aspects. And it's true, it's the days that you're like me, myself, is like I might be having a difficult day. It's hard to balance everything. It's hard to balance like looking after a child and making sure that, you know, you're giving them everything they need, but also at the same time managing work and all the other responsibilities that we have. And then you see a post where you're sharing the same emotion, in maybe not exactly the same emotion, but it's something where you're saying, actually, I'm struggling with this today. It makes you just feel like you're not the only one that's like struggling to balance on that day, you know. And you're right, it just doesn't happen every day. Some days you crush it, and that's great. We should celebrate those days. And it's also not that you should bring yourself down on the days that you don't crush it, in that, like, you know, you may not have been able to manage your time as well one day, but it's just having grace and just knowing that actually, you know, some days are bad and that's okay.
Yeah, that's all about self-compassion, you know. It's so funny. What is it about becoming a mum before that point, before you have children, in whichever way you were blessed with them? It's really easy to go, oh man, it's all right, it was just a rubbish day and I'll pick myself up tomorrow. But then you have a kid and all of a sudden it's like, how dare I be human? And so self-compassion is something that's missing for so many mums. And if I may just kind of go into what that would look like, you know, having self-compassion is all about being compassionate to yourself when you're suffering. So it's not the self-love, it's not self-care, but when you are suffering, and suffering can be frustration, it can be guilt, mum guilt, you know, that's a huge one. It can be poor time management, just like you said. Just any failure is a moment of suffering. And so to be self-compassionate in that moment is to, first of all, recognize it. Like, don't push it away, you know, like, no, I've just got to brush it off and be strong because that's what I get for being a mum. Like, I've just got to suck it up. Quite the opposite. You have to give it its kind of spotlight. And, you know, as contrived as it might feel, it's super powerful to just go, you know what, right now I'm feeling frustrated. And you could take away the power from the emotion as soon as you say that. And it goes, oh, she found me. And it just kind of like simmers down a bit. So that's being mindful with the emotion, acknowledging it, naming it, and then recognizing that you're not the only one. And you don't do that because, you know, you're trying to say, well, somebody else's problems are bigger than mine, but to recognize that we are all connected. So, you know, I always say, you know, there's not a mother's club where we're all lumped in and everybody's the same, but the connection that we have is the fact that we are human, right? So recognizing there are other mums who are feeling this way as well, and then being kind to yourself about it. And it's so funny how it's so easy for mums to be compassionate towards our own kids. You know, if they fall over and graze their knee and they're crying, we don't go, oh, just suck it up, you'll be fine. We just, you know, automatically, I mean, sometimes we do feel like saying that, but, you know, let's be real. It just kind of comes automatically, that pull to want to alleviate somebody else's suffering who's close to us. So it can really help to actually swap those seats and kind of role play to yourself in your mind. Like, if this was my child, or if it was somebody who's really dear to me experiencing that, what would I say to them? And simply just substitute you for I and say it to yourself.
I love that, because it's so true, right? If your partner is going through something, or if your best friend is going through something, you're so compassionate towards them. But when we're dealing with something, it's just so challenging. Like, I mean, I'm in a cast right now because I had to have surgery on my finger.
Oh, wow.
And like, it's been difficult, you know, like, it's like trying to manage everything has been challenging. And so it got to a stage where it was really overwhelming. And you're right, just recognizing that that's what I was feeling was such a big relief, you know, just to be able to know that I'm feeling overwhelmed and with something that I have no control over, because I am in a cast, like, I have no control over that. So I have to accept that that is the situation. And then you make edits to where, like, things aren't important right now, you know?
Exactly. You've hit on an amazing point that I literally just posted about this week is the overwhelm, and how many mums go, I can't handle it. There's too much on my plate. And, it ruffles a few feathers when I say it, but like, you have to make the choice. That's on you. It's not your fault that you're overwhelmed. It's not your fault that there's all this expectation and pressure and your to-do list is miles long. That's not your fault. But now you have the power and the choice to go, that's not important, take it off the list. That's not important, take it off the list. Say yes to my kids more, say no to this person more, say no to myself more, right? Because a lot of the pressure comes from us as mothers. Like, no, it has to be a certain way, otherwise I've failed as a mum. And you just got to look at that and go, really? Right. Does it really have to be that way?
Like a TV day is okay, right? If you all need a bit of a rest.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And think about the benefits of that. You're having a shared experience with your kids watching the TV together, use it for good and say to your kids, this is huge. Like, our children need to see that we are human beings. Our children are learning from us how to handle our emotions, right? This is it. We're the role models, and it's a huge burden, but it's also like such an amazing tool, and we've spoken about this before, Sumaya, about how I feel like this is the generation of mothers that's flipping everything upside down in a good way, right? And we're kind of the transition mothers. So when I say transition mothers, it's because the generation before us, and I know this is quite general, but the generation of mothers before us were one way, and then we've got our kids looking at us for like, okay, so how do I do this mum thing, mum? Or how do I expect my wife, if it's a boy, to do the mum thing? So when I say transition, it's because we're kind of breaking all the cycles and disrupting all the patterns and the conditioning we got from our own mothers, grandmothers, etc. And at the same time, we're passing on that example and that information to our children. So we're kind of like the vehicle. It's amazing, like the power that we can have. And I think zooming out in those moments where we're pressuring ourselves and going, actually, taking a bird's eye view, what's actually important right now? Is it that I want my child to be happy and the house atmosphere in the home to be relaxed and fun and light? Or is it really important that I get every single thing done on here? And is anyone even going to notice apart from me?
Right. I love that. I mean, it's so important to do the zoom out, because I think that's when you really see what's important. And sometimes it's hard to see what's important until you do that, right? Until you stop and look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely. Everybody needs to pause.
Exactly. I mean, I love that you say that we are the mothers that are transitioning into something different, because I think I agree with you. I feel like our children are being raised in a different way to the way we were raised. We still, though, hear, even in our generation, we still hear people say that she's a natural. I wonder how that impacts moms in general.
Yeah. That comment that it comes naturally, or it should come naturally, it implies that there is a right way to do it. Right. Which obviously there isn't. There's no manual, right? Unfortunately, there's no script. It just is a day-by-day experience. Like, and I even take issue with parenting labels. So I'm this type of parent, or, I'm part of this parenting crew. It really is kind of putting this exclusivity on everything, and again saying that there is a certain way to do things, and if you're not doing it that way, you're wrong, or you're not part of our club anymore. Right. It's not a thing that's supposed to come naturally. Like, your life literally changes overnight, whether you birth your own children, or whether you were blessed with them through adoption, whatever it is, overnight you're a mother. And that's huge. Like, I don't know if you can imagine taking on a new career role that was completely different. You'd never done it before, and just being thrown into the deep end, and on day one being told like, oh, you're no good at this. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Right. You'd be given a job description, you'd be trained, you'd have a support team, you'd have periodical reviews, all of it. That just doesn't happen in motherhood. So it baffles me that this is still so steeped in all the messaging that we see. What does it even mean for it to come naturally? Because Like it's such a dangerous message to give. And I just really, my hope and my mission for mums is to be able to see that this is their own unique journey, and they can make it whatever the hell they want it to look like, as long as they're not harming anyone, right? And they're not harming themselves. We all have something unique to offer this world, and so we can use our mothering as a way to go, you know what, I have this gift and I'm passing it on to my child. And it's a ripple effect, it really does. Your kid is going to go and play with their friend and pass on the value that you gave them, and it's going to actually, we're literally saving the world. Mothers are amazing.
I 100% agree. We really do impact the next generation. You talk a lot on your page about having cheerleaders and having people around you, mom friends, like a unit, your sort of social circle around you that is like sort of supporting you. How important is it for moms to actually have that?
Well, something I hear quite often is I'm not as social as I'd like to be as a mum. I wish I had more friends. I wish I could get out there. And so my question to mums is why? Like, what is your intention there? Is it because you think you're supposed to have a huge group of friends? Or is it because you're genuinely looking for support and connection? If you're looking for support and connection, which is what I really hope for, that's what we actually need. It doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be in the form of a huge group of friends that everybody is the same or has the same interests. Even if it's one person, that is enough. And actually, before I even go into that, I think number one, it has to be yourself. Look at the relationship that you have with yourself. How do you talk to yourself? And this can be quite triggering when I talk about this. And if it is to anyone that's listening, that's because it's your kind of sign to really take a long, hard look and look at what your self-talk sounds like. If you're berating yourself on a daily basis, it's really hard for you to know that what you need from a friendship with somebody else, from a relationship with somebody else, because you haven't given yourself the experience of acceptance, of love. So we can find that absolutely externally in other relationships, but then it's really damaging if we come home and we're judging ourselves and being super critical. Like, it needs to start within. It needs to start with self-acceptance, with self-love. And then in terms of finding a tribe, if I can call it that, it doesn't have to be a mum, right? It really doesn't have to be a mum. And this is something that I'd like everyone who's listening to stop doing. It just reminds me of when I was a kid and my mum would be like, oh, look, this person's over and she's 7, just like you should go be friends. And I'm like, just because we're both the same age, like super awkward. And I see this with mothers, like, oh, she's got 2 kids under the age of 7 and so do I. So I'm going to be friends with her. And like, how many of us have been on the most awkward play dates because that was where it ended, right. So it's finding common ground with other people by doing the things that you love. Like, you can't just sit at home and cry about not having enough friends when they're all outside or they're all on your online groups. You have to really put yourself out there and start doing the things that you love to do. So whether that's hobbies or particular people that you like to follow or talks that you like to watch, books that you like to read, when you start putting that energy out and, showing the universe or, a higher power, whoever you believe in, that you are excited for the world, right? And you honor yourself enough to go and do the things that you're passionate about, or just, passion's a big word, but things that you enjoy. Yeah. That's where you're going to find your people. That's where you're going to find the connection. And some of them might not be mums, some of them might be single, some of them might have 10 kids, whatever. That's so irrelevant, in terms of finding support specifically within motherhood. Everybody, please go on your Instagram feeds and get rid of any accounts, or on your Facebook groups, whatever, get rid of any accounts that don't inspire you, that don't resonate with you. If you're looking through your Instagram and going, oh my God, that makes me, gives you a horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach, just delete it. He or she is not out there to target you. They're just doing their thing and giving their message. So it's up to you to go, I'm going to completely, and I did this a few months ago, like just completely shake up my accounts and make sure that when I look and I scroll through my feed, all I see are things that I connect with, I resonate with, that elevate me.
Absolutely. I love that message. And I think that's so important for us all to do. And it's important to do on an intermittent basis, I think, because sometimes we fall into the trap of like just getting back into it. And it's just important to remind yourself that actually I want the positive energy and I want to be inspired and I want to be uplifted when I'm, whatever I'm interacting with, because we're so critical of that when we are meeting people in person, like we want to be around people that have a positive energy, etc. And so we're more likely to be critical of that, I should say. But online, we're a bit more accepting of allowing other things to trickle in.
Yeah. And at the moment, we're online all the time because we can't be out in a lot of places and meeting people in person. So yeah, that's a really good point. The online community is where it's at the moment. And I just want to add to that it's important to ask for help, and the support you receive and the responses you receive when you do ask for help will show you like where your people are, right? So whatever it is, I promise you, there are other mums who have gone through the same thing, whether it's birth stuff, baby stuff, teenager stuff. If you're a mum whose kids have flown the nest, like there are other mums who've been through the same thing. And so just putting the question out there will bring you so much relief and will bring that tribe to you.
100%. I absolutely love that. You share a lot of messaging about you are more than a mom. And I think this is really, really important to talk about because it's such an important message. For whatever reason, people decide to change their lifestyle or adapt their lifestyle when they have children. And that's fine. They may opt to do something one way and choose to change it a few years down the line. And it is whatever works for everybody. But it's important to remember that you had hobbies and interests before you had children. And it's okay to continue those through after you have children and into their adult life as well.
Exactly. And this is a big one. This is kind of really what my whole mission is about, in a nutshell. But it's this whole thing that my children are my world that is super dangerous, and it can go down a slippery slope. Like the language that we use is so powerful and important. So of course we love our children, of course we want the best for them, of course when we make decisions, big, little, we factor in how it's going to affect our children.
Right.
But that can't be the end, because if it keeps going that way and everything is about the kids, number one, you're physically affected, right? You're going to be totally run down. Why? Because you've used all of your energy on other people and completely depleted your own energy levels. Your body is just, it's done. Emotionally, right? You haven't been filling your cup. And I know that's a cliche, but it's so important. If you're not pausing and giving yourself time to experience, like we said a minute ago, the negative emotions, but also the happy ones, like slow down, like just savor it. It's always like rushing on to the next thing, right? So every aspect of your well-being is affected when you are neglecting yourself. So yeah, it can look like carrying on hobbies and activities you used to do before becoming a mum, maybe just adapting how often or how intense or where or whatever it is, what that looks like. But it can also be an opportunity to rediscover a completely different version of yourself. But either way, the emphasis here is, yes, that you are not, and just in quotation marks, but you're not just a mum. When your kids grow up and they leave the home, you don't want to be in a situation where you're going, oh crap, like, what have I done? You don't know who you are. And so a great place to start with that is knowing yourself, right? So what are the things that I like? What are the things that are important to me? What am I good at, right? Just those are three really basic things that you can ask yourself. And if you don't know, then go out there and explore, try new things, speak to new people, read new books. Like there's a whole world out there. And for mums who are, having a pretty full-on experience at the moment, I speak as a mum of two who are 7 and 4, and they're at school. So I do have the time to focus on my business or social or whatever. But for the mums who are having a much more full-on experience, I would say totally just go back to that to-do list, get rid of everything that doesn't fill you up, right? Really, honestly, it doesn't matter what the house looks like. As I said, my kids are 7 and 4, and my house is still a tip, not because I don't have the time to do it, but because I'm using the time to do the things that fill me up. Right? So if you've got a toddler or a newborn, find pockets, 5 minutes. I'm sure you've got 5 minutes. If that means going and taking a shower instead of doting on your sleeping baby, please do it, right? They're still going to be there when you come back. If it means calling a friend, you know, when your baby wakes up in the middle of the night, please do it. We're not meant to do this alone. It's all about just, you know, I've started doing this thing on my Instagram where I'll list 3 things I've done today that are just for me. What are 3 things I've done today to fill my own cup? And then I'll ask my audience, what's one thing that you've done? Because it does have to be a daily thing, because it will feel really uncomfortable in the beginning, and all the feelings of guilt will come up if you're not used to doing that. But just start with one thing a day, so you can look back and go, I'm really glad I read that page of my book. Or, you know, I'm really glad I drank my tea hot this time. But just take it one moment at a time. You know, it's not a case of going, okay, I need to figure out my identity and my purpose and my passion. It doesn't work like that, right? It's a very organic process.
And I love that you mentioned that it's, you know, drinking your tea hot is such a simple thing. It doesn't have to be a spa day or going to the gym or like doing a 5-hour workout, you know, like they don't have to be big things. As long as you do them mindfully, that's really where you get it from, right? That's where you feel the satisfaction when you do it with the intention that this is for you.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it's that word, it's the intention. Just ask yourself why you're doing it. And if the answers don't satisfy you, then you should really rethink your plan for the day.
I love that. Thank you so much. So, Sarah, finally, where can listeners find you? And how do they get connected with you? And how can they join your amazing course?
So I'm on Instagram. That's where I hang out. That's where I am every day, on my stories, on my feed. My business name is A Life You Chose. So that's the same on my Instagram. It's at A Life You Chose. There's a link there. I'm launching today. So at the time of this recording, I'm launching my group course called The Mum Awakening. It's a beta course, so it's going to be a much smaller group of mothers, so you're going to get a lot more direct support. But all the information, if you go to my feed, is going to be on the link tree there.
Thank you so much. I'll link all of that into the show notes so listeners can find you. Again, thank you so much for the value that you bring to mothers every single day, because I love your posts. I love connecting with your posts. I look for your posts when I'm scrolling, which is amazing. And thank you again for all that you do for the community.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.